Welcome to another episode of Keepin It A Hundo. Bill Bayno stopped by again to talk about the current state of the NBA in regards to the COVID-19 pandemic, the way it's affected his team, the league, and his family. His mother passed away last month due to COVID-19. She was battling cancer, but COVID ended things sooner than expected. Some of the misconceptions I've heard about coronavirus have to do with people that are already ill coming down with it. They're more susceptible to it, and they make up a significant portion of the population that has died from it, so the numbers don't exactly shake out. Look, if you have cancer and they tell you got a year to live, and you got 1 year to spend with your family and your loved ones, and then COVID comes along and takes you out 6 months sooner, 9 months sooner, that's time you could have spent with your loved ones that you'll never get back. So to everybody who says that this pandemic isn't affecting us as much as the statistics say, consider those who lost loved ones sooner than they should have, like Bill Bayno. Bill was having a tough time with it, and he's in Miami during his off time from the NBA. He's an assistant coach with the Indiana Pacers. We've become friends over the past couple years, playing in the same pickup games, have some mutual friends, and for our love of basketball and some other things that we'll get into on the podcast. We're definitely going to discuss The Last Dance. That's been the number one sports topic over the past couple weeks. The Michael Jordan documentaries, they've just been great to relive those moments, and it's great for some people that weren't old enough to experience it back then to get a chance to check out what made him the greatest of all time. And we discussed Bill's personal relationship with Jordan back when Bill was the head coach at UNLV. It's no secret that Mike liked to spend time in Vegas. He had a propensity for gambling, and Bill got to know him a little bit. Yeah, Bill's got a lot of stories. I think he's holding back on us, though. He's got a book deal in the works. Possible. It's a tentative book deal, I should say, in the works. We get into that a little bit. This podcast is dedicated to Sophie Bayno, the mother of Bill Bayno, who passed away on April 1st, 2020, due to COVID-19. Please enjoy my second conversation on Keepin It A Hundo with Indiana Pacers assistant coach Bill Bayno. The reason I was at All-Star Weekend, one of my best friends from University of Miami, his brother is the head doctor of the NBA.
What's his name?
Leroy Sims. He was the Golden State doctor, and then he moved up to
Boston dude?
He's a Chicago guy. So he got us tickets, and he's going to do the pod, but he's been crazy busy because he's fighting, he's treating patients with COVID right now out in San Francisco. And I want to get his, he had to fly into Oklahoma City that night that they had.
It's crazy how it's just divided our country, man. And I get, but I got good friends that are Republicans that, one of my boys won't even fucking speak to me anymore because I sent a fucking funny thing that Rappaport did. And he's like my brother, and he fucking will not return a text now. He got so upset.
Mike Rapp?
Yeah.
You don't know Mike, do you?
I coach Mike at 5-Star.
Oh, that's right. He did go to 5-Star. He talks about that.
So I was his counselor. I sat at his table, and then the craziest shit was I got the UNLV job, and I ran into him in New York literally 5 different times in New York City. Once in a strip club, the other 4 times just walking down the street. It was yo. And we were laughing this is fucking crazy. Because the first time I ran into him, I said, hey, you won't remember me, but I was your counselor at 5-Star. I was the college coach at your table, and him and Jason Matthews, who played for Calipari at Pitt.
Yeah, I remember.
Sat together. They both went to St. Monica's high school.
That's right.
And he's like, yeah, yeah. You know, he was so cool. So we, you know, I've fallen out of touch with him. But, you know, I sent that thing and my boy just fucking went off. And I'm like, come on, man. And so I've sent him like, and this is like my closest friend in the world. But he's a diehard.
Like one of our mutual friends.
Yeah, yeah. I even said, man, I told my boy, I don't give a fuck about politics. I said, fuck it. I said, I care about my friends, man.
Right.
I said, call me, let me know. And he hasn't called me. But, you know, it's funny. Half the country watches Fox, half the country watches CNN. And it's all a big fucking game. You know, it is. It's just a big game. And, you know, I hope they're right. All the medical experts are wrong. But what are the odds that the politicians are right and all the medical experts? And my sister's a doctor. It's a math equation. It's why, my sister said, it's why San Francisco locked down first, because they went through the AIDS crisis. So that they knew how to deal with a pandemic, and that's why they were the first ones to say, that's it. 6 counties locking down. You're only going out for essentials. You got to make appointments, whether it's pharmacy, grocery, you're going to social distance when you're there. We're going to limit how many people get in. And I think, you know, they've had a pretty good handle on it.
What kind of doctor is this?
She's an osteopathic doctor and one of the best in New York City. She said it's just a math equation, you know. So on March 10th, we were playing the Celtics.
Yeah.
3 hours before, I talked to my mom, and she had just finished radiation. And she was on this new target gene therapy drug, and she was just not doing good, really weak, fatigued, and she just said some things to me on the phone, get me off these meds. I don't want to live like this. If this is how they're making me feel, I'd rather die. So I'm like, Mom, I'm fucking coming home, you know. And we didn't have a game for 4 days. That was a Tuesday. We played Philly on Saturday, so I went into Nate's office 3 hours before the game and just said, can I go home tomorrow morning for 3 days? And he's like, yeah. And that was Wednesday, the 11th. And we're getting ready to watch the Jazz OKC game.
So was I.
Yeah, and my sister talked to some friends who are epidemiologists, and she said, look, we're starting to get, you know, cases of asymptomatic spread. It's a pandemic. When you have that, there's no stopping it. So that morning, we went out to Long Island, me, her, and her husband, and we just self-isolated, you know. So it gave me 21 days with my mom, but you know, when she did go, it was awful, man. You know, and people are dying like that. And I get the economy, you know, and people want to start up, but you got to be smart about it, you know. And the same shit happened in 1918.
Right.
When they started to plateau and go down through a parade. And fucking it came back, the second wave.
Big group of people celebrating together.
You know, and all the Republicans are killing Fauci. He's apolitical. He worked for both Bushes.
That's what I'm trying to say. Like, what is in it for this guy?
It's all about the election. Trump wants to get reelected, and he won't admit, you know, that he killed the pandemic. There's a meme of Obama speaking 5 years ago and predicting this is going to happen.
Bill Gates, same thing.
Yeah, and you know, like Zeus was killing Bill Gates. I go, what's wrong with Bill Gates? You know, fucking guy's a humanitarian helping the world.
There's not much in it for people to say stay home. You know what I mean? Like, they're not gaining from it. Now, for you to say don't stay home, there is something to gain, because the economy, you're losing money. I'm losing money. You're probably losing. We're all losing money.
I'm lucky. I'm not yet, but I know we're gonna.
Yeah.
We're all gonna take a pay cut, and you know, I'm sending out. I'm giving away money to all my friends that don't have it. You know, I'm sending them, you know, gift cards so they can eat. I was watching Gangs in New York, and even as far back, you know, I think that was in the 1600s.
No, that's 1800s.
1800s? Okay. Well, Butcher Bill was part of the Native Americans, and they didn't want the Irish or the blacks, you know, and it's always been, you know, that way in this country, you know, in our Republican Party. You got guys with swastikas on the, you know, steps of the Detroit courthouse, you know, protesting with automatic rifles and beards and Nazi fucking tattoos. Yeah, and it's like, fuck, man, it's sad. It's sad. It's sad, but it's really sad when you lose a friend. I hope he comes around, but I mean, it's fucked me up. It's really hurt me that, you know, I sent a joking meme, and you know, now one of my best friends who we've been through so much together.
My closest friends from home, we all have a group text. We've known each other since first grade. And when we get into it, people's feelings get hurt. One guy just left the group. He won't, like, you can leave the message. Yeah. He exited the group. He's actually my last guest on my podcast. And he's just, I can't do this anymore. And so, like, it's dividing friends. Yeah. So in that group text and my other group text with some friends from home, we had to say no politics in the group text.
Exactly what we
can't
did.
do it.
Another buddy of mine who's a football quarterback at UCLA, David Norrie, he's an ABC sports announcer. He's a big Trumper politician, and he sent something, and I just said, look, man, I'm as guilty as anyone, but no more politics amongst friends. We got to leave it alone. And he sent back, I love you, Coachy. I said, I love you too, Norrie, and my boy did not respond. And then I sent him a long, heartfelt, I apologize. I said, yeah.
So did any of you guys on the Pacers get tested?
No. I think, pretty much it's standard, especially early on, if you didn't have symptoms, you couldn't get tested.
Well, that was one of the problems people had, is that a lot of teams were they all got tests, and it was like, how the fuck did they get those tests?
Yeah. And I think those were the teams that had that initial exposure.
And they knew that somebody probably had it.
Right. And so no, now supposedly in Indiana, we can go back and we can all get tested, but my sister, who's a doctor, told me that there's only a few, like the antibody tests. She said Quest and LabCorp are the only two that are FDA approved.
I wish they could figure that out so we could all just get the antibody test.
It takes time and the FDA fast-tracked a lot of these tests, and that's why, there's probably a lot of false negatives and false positives.
I saw Miles Turner's dad.
Thank God, because he has a weight problem, and it's.
And he's healthy now, right? He's recovered.
Yeah, amen. Carl Towns' mom, and I knew Jackie.
Yeah, you coached in Minnesota with him, right?
No, DR, when he was a senior in high school. Yeah, so I got to know his mom.
His mom's Dominican, right?
Yeah, sweet lady. Yeah, dad's American. People are dying.
So what are they telling you about? I've been keeping up with, Adam Silva met with.
It's all they're trying to push it through. I think just in case. I think this is all an experiment where some teams, have facilities open. But I think they also, I get it. They want to try to give it every chance, but there's still so many competitive disadvantage. Like some teams can't have their guys in the gym. Right. So how is that fair? Right. Especially if we have a shortened training camp and you have some teams that are 2 weeks behind where their guys have been getting individual workouts in their gym and other teams can't.
Like I heard Jason Tatum and Giannis hadn't picked up a ball in a month. Yeah. But some guys have a gym at their house and they're working out every day.
Yeah. I just talked to Alize Johnson, who's one of our young players. Yeah. He has a gym. He has a court, and he and his brother play, and they're shooting every day and being able to play one-on-one full court, and so he'll be ready when he comes back. Yeah. But there's so many guys, and I have a lot of agent friends. They're really worried. You think about on a normal season, you have a lot of guys like Sabonis 2 seasons ago called me up literally 10 days after the season and said, I'm in LA, where are you? I said, I'm in LA. He said, can we get working? Yeah. We started working on like May 10th. But, most guys, even the veterans, are getting at least July, August, and September of both individual work and playing pickup that prepares their body for the season. And we're going to, do 3 weeks. It scares me a little bit, with injuries. And, I think we have to, we got to give it a shot. There's too much money involved. I think the fans want it. But I pray nobody, infects anybody and nobody's parents die, because I know what it's like to lose a parent to this.
Yeah, so my condolences again. Your dad died last year. Your mom died last month.
Yeah, April 1st, Sophie Bayno. She's looking down at us.
Man, I can't imagine. Do you think that they're going to play with like the families, or limited people can come and be part of the bubble environment? Or, obviously immediate family, it sounds like that's a done deal.
Yeah, I don't know. I think the GMs, the presidents have been on, and the head coaches probably have been on those calls. The assistants haven't been privy to those. I know a lot of players are worried about infecting, and now you have these young kids that are showing symptoms of these respiratory inflammatory diseases. I forget the name of it. They said it mimics the Kawasaki disease.
5-year-old died.
Yeah, and there's kids that are dying, and now the cases are in the hundreds, and that was one of my sister's concerns early on, is that the longer this goes, we know so little about it, but her fear is that it's going to get stronger and it's going to mutate.
It's already
killing younger people. Yeah. So I don't know what they're going to do, when they talk about the bubble. I know a lot of players probably don't want to go 3, 4, 5 weeks, because I think we're going to have a minimum of a month to play and practice, because like I said, guys are playing 3 months before the season, and now we haven't played in 3.5 months. So, I worry guys may get hurt there. But I think we have to have at least a month, and then, guys I don't know what's safer. Whatever's safer, we have to do. If it's safer to keep the families away, then it should just be players and coaches. If somebody does test positive, and now you got to do the tracing, and how many people has he affected.
You got to keep everything to a minimum.
Yeah, so I think probably, I don't know, my guess would be that families aren't allowed, and it's just us. And if someone tests positive, here's the other thing. What if Victor Oladipo or Kawhi Leonard or LeBron test positive and they have to quarantine for 14 days? That's unfair. That kills that team's chances.
Yeah. You guys can win without Vic. You proved that.
But how the playoffs are different. I think, and Vic was just coming into his own, and this has helped Vic because it's given him extra time, and nobody works harder, and I know he's killing his workouts, and he's going to be much, much better off. So, that's been a blessing for him. But yeah, there's so many unknowns.
In theory, it sounds great, but I hear there's a hard out. You guys got to be done by like Labor Day. There's some deal with the NFL where you guys can't.
Yeah, I've heard that too. So they can do free agency and the draft, and then start up in December.
Right, and you don't want to bleed into next season, because then you're affecting 2 seasons.
Yeah, that's my fear, is if we do this, and God forbid, something happens and it gets, somehow spread, and somebody dies, or someone, we end up not being able to finish this experiment, whatever you want to call it. Next year's affected. I don't know what the chances of that are, but, then we're talking about losing serious money. So, the one thing everybody in the league trusts Adam Silver's.
Yeah, he's throwing a perfect game so far. He hasn't screwed up since he took over.
Yeah, and I think we all trust him. We all know he cares about all of us. The other thing I worry about are the coaches that are high risk in categories.
Yeah.
Older, heart issues, diabetes. God forbid Nate got it, or one of our, other older head coaches that, it's uncharted territory. No one has the answers, but I just hope we err on the side of safety and do the right thing.
The Last Dance. For several reasons, it's been great. My girlfriend's younger. I have friends that are younger. You have players that you coach that are younger, and they've all heard, and they know he's the GOAT. But to see it and to experience it to a higher degree has been cool for me to see them experience it more. Because you were right there. I was growing up watching it. I saw all of it.
I even forgot, though, how explosive he was.
I forgot about a lot of that stuff from second year when he had the Achilles injury and he went back to UNC. You couldn't even pull that off these days.
I forgot he came back in March and lost in the Eastern Conference Finals to Orlando. I thought he didn't come back till that following year.
Right.
I totally forgot that. But for me, it brought back a ton of memories because those were my Vegas years, and I worked Michael's fantasy camp. So I got to know him well. He used to call me Billy Boy, and the greatest guy in the world. My only issue with that documentary is some of the media back then, and even the documentary itself tries to portray him as, being a bad guy or, being too tough on his teammates. And I didn't see that at all. I saw him challenging his teammates, but a lot of it, it was good humor, and you could see it came from a good place. And I knew Mike personally, we've fallen out of touch. You know, I was never a close friend of his, but he didn't know me from Adam. I was the only non-Hall of Fame coach that worked there because it was in Vegas, and I was a Nike coach. So I was Coach K's assistant, Larry Brown's assistant during the camp, and it was so much fun. But we would see Mike every day, and I was, at that time, really close with Charles. I actually stayed in Charles' suite for one of the weeks of the camp. That was back when we were hanging out at night, and he's like, boy, you better not be late for my boys' camp. And so he had this 17,000 square foot or whatever it was suite on the top of, I want to say it was Bally's. And I knew the president of Bally's was one of my boosters, Dean Harold. And, you know, one morning he came in, you know, and just ripped the blankets off me and woke up. And, you know, I jumped out of bed and he goes, you're late. And he was lying. I wasn't.
Charles.
No, Charles. And I jumped out of bed and just sprinted into the bathroom, and he started laughing. He goes, you got an hour, young fella, you got an hour. But it brought back a ton of memories, and Michael was such a good dude, man, a great human being. And, you know, I think it goes back to his mom and dad, but to see what he had to go through. And then the other thing that really hit home, and I just finished watching episode 8. I've been kind of spreading it out to give me something to do. But losing my dad and then losing my mom and seeing him break down, sobbing, crying, kind of helped me, you know, like, damn, there's the greatest player that ever lived who's a legend, but he's human. And, I mean, you lose a parent. If you haven't, for anybody out there, you're going to go through that same emotion. You know, I will just be in the middle of a run and something will hit me and I will just stop and go cry it out. You know, and then I feel better about it. But, you know, to me that was powerful and told, you know, said so much about who Mike was. But he, you know, I was a nobody, and he never made me feel that way. And then we ended up getting, you know, hanging out a little bit and, you know, got close. And, you know, he always, you know, treated me like I was his little brother, and he treated everybody that way. You know, he had time for everybody. And so I think when he said everyone wants to be like Mike, and then he said, but try to be like Mike for a year, I guarantee you wouldn't want to be like Mike.
Yeah.
That said a lot to me, yet he still had time for people. He still treated everyone with respect. He, you know, he helped all those, you saw it on the Last Dance, and, you know, his dad had a lot to do with it too, bringing people to the locker room. But, you know, he was so genuine when he was with some of those, like Scotty Burrell's buddy from UConn that I think was paralyzed. Yeah, you know, I mean, it was genuine. He was joking with the guy. Mike was real. You know?
So that's what I'm saying. And people make him out to be this bad guy, but to see him ribbing his teammates and doing stuff like that, you don't do that when you don't like somebody.
Yeah.
I don't mess with talk shit to people that I don't like. I talk shit to my friends.
Yeah.
People I don't like, I avoid communication.
Right.
So, like, you can tell he has a rapport with his teammates.
Yeah. And that was his way to motivate. And he had a drive they didn't have, and he wanted him to get to that drive. And then all his teammates talking about him.
With reverence.
Yeah. And that, look, we needed that. And, yeah, at times he could be a jerk. But, you know, and that happens. I'll never forget. Kobe scored 63 points on us, you know, and Kobe kind of modeled himself after Mike, obviously.
Sure.
And he was tough on his guys, but, you know, and I don't have inside information, but I do know that it was different there, that there were some issues going on with the Lakers. And the year before Powell got there, we played them in Staples.
When you were with Minnesota? Or?
When I was with Portland. And I think he ended up with 63. I think it was an overtime game, might have been double overtime, but there was a play late in the game where they had the ball out of bounds, and we double-teamed Kobe because we had to foul. They were up, and Lamar Odom took the ball out of bounds, and we doubled, and Lamar made the right play. I forget who he threw it to, but Kobe just lit into him on the court and just, you know, really deflated Lamar. He just dropped his head and his shoulders, and you could just see it in his eyes. Like, man, why is he, you know, I made the right play. Kobe, you weren't open.
Yeah.
And, you know, it looked like that's what he was thinking anyway. But long story short, I don't know if it was regulation or overtime. We were up 3, and we trapped Kobe, and there was like it was the last shot really of either the overtime or the regulation, and he beat the double team and kind of did what Kawhi did against the Sixers. He sprinted to that corner, and I can still see Zach Randolph chasing him because his man set the pick and roll, and Kobe hit a fadeaway three to send the game.
I remember that shot now, yeah.
And no one on their bench stood up and clapped except Sasha Vujacic. Not a trainer, not a coach, nobody. And it just struck me like, damn, something's going on down there. Because it
was Scotty playing for you then? Was he with Portland then?
Scotty who?
Pippen?
No.
I'm trying to think, like, what year was...
We had, I lose track of the years, too.
02 or something?
Zebo, probably, I think LaMarcus Aldridge and Brandon Roy were in their first or second years.
Okay, so the Jailblazers are kind of broken up.
Yeah. Nate McMillan took care of the Jailblazers. As soon as he came in, he cleaned all that up, and we, we built it slowly. We were at a tough. I wasn't there. I scouted the first year. They won 21. Then the next year was where I came in, and we went from 21 to 31 to 41. And then we were in the 50s for my last 3 years when the Wild Wild West was unbelievable. I think we won 54 games one year, and we were the 6th seed.
Yeah,
it was crazy back then.
And as good as LaMarcus was, he was probably the 7th best power forward in the West or something.
Yeah, he was young. I mean, LA came into the league at, I think, 20 years old. Brandon was a little bit older, and, Brandon was the man right away. He was Rookie of the Year, and Brandon was amazing. That's another story. If he didn't have bad knees, we'd be talking about him in the GOAT conversation. And you go look up his numbers in the fourth quarter in crunch time. I think he's one of the top in terms of efficiency, and they call it clutch time, where it's within 5 points in X amount of minutes.
Yeah,
he was unstoppable. But he was playing on one knee for. A long time. And
they knew he wasn't going to last long.
Yeah,
he knew from the beginning, right?
Shame, because he had the surgeries, and then he came back and played in the playoffs against Houston. I want to say he had an MCL surgery, and I'd have to double check it, but it was like 5 days he played in the playoffs.
Jesus.
Yeah, I mean, he came back and. And then that next year he just...
I can't imagine.
Yeah, no, and probably, shouldn't have done it, but that's the competitor he was. Kind of like KD. I think, hindsight, KD was such a competitor. He wanted to win, but I think he came back too soon, obviously. Hindsight's 20/20.
Yeah.
But it just shows you how competitive he is and how much he loves the game.
Some of the stuff that I heard since the podcast, since the docs have been released, I've listened to these podcasts where the director comes on and he gives this like background information about how like things went down or some of the info. So, the whole deal about Nike, Adidas, Spot Built was in the conversation.
Yeah.
So Spot Built matched Nike's offer, but they couldn't match the marketing. And Spot Built's spokesperson at the time was O.J. Simpson. Yeah. And OJ was telling the CEO of Spot Built, you got to sign this guy. He's going to be bigger than me. Like, you got to do this. You got to do this. And they're like, Nike's got him. Forget it. And, imagine if he was Air Jordan was Spot Built.
Yeah. No,
crazy.
I know. And the one guy who didn't get the credit for signing him, I don't think did they ever mention Sonny Vaccaro?
Nah, not once.
And Sonny was the reason why he signed there.
Yeah. You had a relationship with him at UNLV, right?
Yeah. I knew, up and down. We were good for a while, and then when we had our issues with Lamar, Sonny got upset at me, and so we had it. But then we, afterwards we patched it up, and that's the other thing too, that things get twisted. People, the media tried to portray Mike as being bad, and I love Lamar Odom, and I take all the blame for what happened at UNLV. He was again just a sweetheart of a kid, and he and I were similar. We never hurt anyone but ourselves, and we both struggled with alcohol and substance abuse. And Lamar's I pray for him all the time, man. I wish I could reach out to him and talk to him because he I have real love for Lamar, and I feel bad because I was supposed to be the adult back then, but I was going through my shit, and it was just turned into a big mess, and but that was all that was during that time, so that's why it brought back all the memories. '98 was, we won I think that was the year we won the WAC tournament. We won 4 games in 4 days. We beat Chrissy Herron and Tark and those Fresno teams. The first game, we beat Anthony Carter in Hawaii, and they were a 21-22 win team.
Isn't he back down here with the Heat coaching?
I think he is. I've seen him behind the bench
Same
with
here,
somebody.
yeah.
Great dude. He beat us during the regular season where if we would, with a last-second shot, they called a foul on Tyrone Nesby that I think Nesby had a clean block, but he ended up hitting 2 free throws to win the game, or that would have been, and that was my second year in coaching, and it would have been the first time we made the top 25 if we had won that game because we were on a run. And then we beat Utah, who had Andre Miller and Hano Medela, Doliak, Alex Jensen was a really good player.
I remember all those guys.
Jairus, God rest his soul, great dude. And then we beat a really good New Mexico team. But it was all during that time. And then right after that, you go into recruiting, summer comes, and it's the Jordan Fantasy Camp. And for me, that was a highlight, working that. That was some of the best.
You play some blackjack with MJ?
I would watch him. I would mess with Charles because I was closer with Charles. So, Charles would play. They would all play big, but Michael would usually, we'd always have the private VIP area
in the high limit room.
Yeah, and I wasn't a big gambler, but that was back in my drinking days, and so I would just put 100. Charles might be playing 3 stacks of a lot of money, and I just put 100 on one of his spots and play that hand, and he'd get pissed at me, and then we'd win. I go, hey, we won, motherfucker. That's why I'm good luck, and he's just start laughing. But that's another storyline that breaks my heart, that he and MJ, don't talk anymore. And, they were like brothers. And Mike really cared about him. Mike pulled me in one day because he knew Charles and I were hanging out every night. He said, hey, I'm hearing Charles is getting a little crazy on the tables with how much he's playing. And I said, well, I ain't got the money y'all got, so I don't know what crazy is, but, he does play a lot of money, and I wasn't snitching on him. They were best friends, and he said, all right, I'm going to talk to him. That's how much he cared about him. He said...
I heard Kenny Smith brokered something with them where they had to sit down and figure things out, but then I think they've had a falling out since. Yeah,
I wish that would happen. But I get it, they're both ultra competitive. Charles feels like, it was his job to say what he said. Michael feels like Charles should have said it a different way or whatever. But it's a shame because those dudes had real love for each other. Like we all have brothers from other mothers. Just like my buddy that has kind of cut me off, and to see those guys. I meditate every day, and I meditate on my mom and dad. I meditate on trying to make the world a better place, and now I'm meditating on getting my relationship back with my buddy through all this political nonsense and this virus, and they're in the same boat. So that, because I saw that up close and personal, and for Michael to grab me and say, hey, that's my brother, man. And I know he did talk to Mike. 'Cause I used to talk to Mike, to Charles, but I wasn't as close, and he used to, laugh and say, man, I got 40 million, I'm cool. I'm like, yeah, but you're losing a lot of money, man. And
just so there's no confusion, what is the main point of contention between them?
I think it was my understanding. I could be wrong. Charles was on TNT, and so there was a time the Hornets or the Bobcats were struggling.
What it is. You're right.
So he kind of
criticized him.
Criticized them. I think it was constructive, and he wasn't killing him. He was just like, look, you can't hire your friends unless they're experts in the business. And Michael was so loyal, he hired some friends, and there were some bad draft choices made. And Charles felt like he had to tell the truth. And but they're both great dudes. Like Charles Barkley is one of the greatest guys on this planet.
He seems like it.
Big heart. They both have big hearts. They'll help anybody. I saw last time I talked to Mike was I think early this year, or maybe it was last year when he gave all that money I think there were floods in North Carolina, or there might have been a hurricane, and I had read about it, and I just went up to him and said, "Hey, I heard what you did, and God bless you, man." And he gave me dap and called me Billy Boy, and how you doing, Billy Boy? And
That's cool.
yeah. No, it's Mike's a down to earth dude. To have that, to be the number one celebrity maybe in the history of the world. It's him, Muhammad Ali, Mother Teresa, whatever. But
sure, he's up there.
He's up there.
He's on the top.
And he's a humble, down to earth, great dude. And I loved when they would hand him in The Last Dance. They'd hand him the iPad to look at different things.
That was a great tactic.
Yeah.
It worked really well.
You see how genuine he is. Look,
he's about to cry when he sees his mom.
Yeah, he cut the one interview off with his dad, or when all the people in the media were portraying him to be this bad guy.
Yeah.
I mean, how real and genuine is that? Damn, did I really hurt my teammates' feelings that bad?
Right.
He got emotional about that. If that's not real love, I don't know what is. So that was my only thing with that, and I think it kind of goes with politics. Politics and media have divide people. They divide our country, and I just think it's human nature. We still have the greatest country in the world, but we're divided, man. We're divided, and
the longer the division stays, the more chance of us losing our place in the world.
Yeah.
As a superpower, This is how you divide and you conquer.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've always been apolitical, like Michael. Like, look, I'm a basketball player. I've been a ball player. I've been a coach. I've never been in politics. Yeah, I care about people. So
right. Exactly. Same here.
But I don't vote parties.
I'm not party affiliated.
I lean obviously left because I want to help people. I make a lot of money, but I give a lot of my money away to help others, and I think we all have an obligation to do that. And it's just I vote for people. I didn't vote for Trump, but I didn't vote for Hillary either. And I was a big Obama fan. And I see people killing Obama, and it's just, to me, it's a game. It's like, and they're all competitive people, and they're all smart people. So they want to win the game.
Too.
Yeah, and egos, and we want to win the game, and if you got to bash the other guy, and that's what we do. And so I don't know. I'm glad I'm not in politics. I just hope people love each other. That's, to me, put love out in the world any way you can, and try to get rid of the hate. And
that's always been my one question to people who support Trump. It's just, I say, look, we'll end the conversation, but just tell me this. Do you think he's a good person?
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
And most of them say no. They don't think he's a good person. So.
And the economy has, I even told my buddy, you're right. He has done, the economy's doing good, but I just can't believe some of my, they're smarter than I am. They're, and they're good people, and they see him do and say these things, and I just don't get it. Like, I guess it's party affiliation, and it's a game. My buddy calls me a liberal, pinko, commie Democrat.
Right.
And I laugh and I joke, and I'm not democratic.
Most of us are so close to the middle anyway these days.
Yeah.
Like, we're not way over on the left.
Yeah.
They're not way over on the
right.
right.
I love John Kasich. When I watched all those debates, and I don't know shit about politics, but I'm like, you know what? I'd like that dude as my president.
I enjoy the debates for entertainment
he seemed to
purpose.
me real. Like, I listened to him talk, and I said, that guy has a good heart. He cares about people.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's conservative, but so what? I would, if I thought I had any chance, but it's a shame a guy like that had zero chance to win.
Zero.
So I didn't vote. I don't vote unless I believe in someone.
Yeah.
And I've had friends that criticize me, well, you should vote anyway. I said, okay, I live in Indiana. It's a Republican state, so
you have no influence.
If I don't believe in their Republican candidate, what sense does it make to me now if maybe I should have voted for Kasich and just, but I don't know, man. I just, I wish we could just be more about love than winning. It's not always about winning.
It's not always about winning, but let's get back to The Last Dance and how competitive and it was all about winning for Mike. Some of the other stuff I heard after the docs were, well, first of all, I love how the strategy they used in the doc where he kind of had last cut. He had like, look, if he didn't want it in it, he left notes and said, look, like, I don't feel good about this, take that out. But the director said he actually didn't ask him to take anything out. He looked over everything. He said, should we take this stuff out, like this stuff with Horace Grant or this stuff with B.J. Armstrong? And he's like, because it seems like it might not be strong enough storyline. And he's like, no, that stuff was important. It was really important.
Yeah.
And the divide between him and Horace. And
Yeah.
it just seemed like Horace just talked a little bit, ran his mouth a little bit, and got himself in some trouble. But I like how they did it because a lot of documentaries are puff pieces where they just make this guy look like they just put him on a pedestal.
Did you see today's story about Stockton? The director couldn't get in touch with Stockton for, I want to say, 2 years. And then when he finally did, Stockton said, I don't want to be a part of a Michael Jordan puff piece.
Oh, see? That's what I mean.
And, and then he eventually did. So I think that what it said today where I read is Stockton's going to be a big part of the
last two?
The last two, yeah.
Okay.
Because I think that's who they beat.
Yeah.
In
98.
Yeah. And I love John Stockton. How can you not? My thing always was during the Dream Team, Stockton was the one guy that could walk around Barcelona and not be bothered.
Yeah.
Because he was a 6'2" white dude. They're like, there's no way you're on the Dream Team.
I remember
unless you were a devout NBA fan. But most of the Europeans knew they didn't get every game. They only knew
Jordan, Bird, and Magic.
Yeah. And but that's what's great about the game of basketball.
Yeah.
Like we have T.J. McConnell.
Yeah.
And T.J. always jokes when he went to the Combine in Chicago. I mean, this is a great story, and I always bust his chops about it. But he was like the last guy invited. Somebody and he had a great career at Arizona, but he's, a 6'2" little white kid.
Is he really 6'2"?
Probably 6'1".
Yeah.
But he's like, Coach, he calls me Bayno. He's like, Bayno, they were taking my hand measurements and my length, like what my wingspan was. And he's like, look, nobody's drafted me because of the size of my hands. Can we get the 5-on-5 going, please?
Right.
And then no one ever, and I talked to Malcolm Brogdon about this because I had a friend whose son from Atlanta was a McDonald's All-American. So I had Calipari and all these other guys knew I was tight with his dad, and no one wanted Malcolm Brogdon. And this kid ended up, never really materializing and reaching his potential, or maybe he was overrated to begin with. But, you look back, just like they do all these redrafts, and if everybody knew TJ was going to be this good, I mean, he had one, he told me when Duquesne offered, he jumped on it so fast and took the offer.
Right? Yeah.
Well, he probably could have had more, but I committed right away. It was D1, it was Atlantic 10, I'm going.
Yeah.
And then 2 years later, he transfers and he's at Arizona and playing against the best in the world. But that's what's great about the game. That people from all different backgrounds, sizes, shapes, colors. And I always say in evaluating players, there's more mistakes made in the draft than any other category in the entire NBA.
Yeah.
And it's such a hard thing to evaluate. And my thing is, until you get them on a court, you just don't know. Until you get them from college to an NBA court, you don't know. Now, obviously, there were even some doubts about Zion. Is Zion going to be able to do what he did in college? And then, we found out. But there were some doubts. And then you have a bunch of guys that were, just not good enough that everybody thought were good enough. And but it's what makes basketball special to me.
This year's draft is going to be the biggest crapshoot. How are they going to do that?
With all the mistakes made, maybe less is more.
Yeah,
maybe
you don't draft
analysis by
potential.
paralysis.
Yep.
I've always been, not a proponent of putting too much weight into these individual workouts because you have a whole body of work. And I scouted 1 year, so I watched Brandon Roy on tape. I went to see him play in September, play pickup. I watched for 3 days. I watched him win every single pickup game. So I saw the competitive nature in him. I saw him make threes. They all said he couldn't shoot. He would save his athletic ability, but there were times in the game where he needed to. He had a 45-inch vertical. And so I knew, regardless of what Brandon did in the workout, I would have bet my job that he was going to be an all-star. And, some guys come into these workouts and they kill the workout.
Sure.
And then that is what the decision is more weighted on, as opposed to their body of work and who they played against. And, I think we all, we can overanalyze things, and so maybe everybody has seen everybody play during the college year. So they have an opinion. They've seen them. They've watched them practice. They've seen how they handled referees. They've seen how they handled their teammates, how they treated their coaches, the whole 9 yards. So they have a pretty good feel. So now with no real workouts, maybe we'll make better decisions. Maybe there'll be less mistakes this year. You never know.
I just think the college game is so different. So you could be watching something that just it doesn't translate into an NBA game, But you still don't know. You don't know from a workout either.
Well, here's the other thing. You think about every college game, the majority of them, except when Duke plays Kentucky, but there might be 2 other pros on the entire court.
Exactly.
So, that guy is killing it, during the year, but how many actual pros was he matched up against?
Right.
And so
every team's defense is focused to stop that guy.
Yeah. And scouting, they take that into consideration. They look at players against the best opponents and what are their numbers when they played, against the better teams. But still, the better teams doesn't mean there were pros on that team.
Sure.
There have been a lot of good teams where there weren't a lot of pros. It will be interesting though to see how this draft plays out. I feel awful. I can't imagine if my senior year got interrupted and I couldn't play in the NCAA tournament.
Oh man.
My senior year I played against Manute Bol and Mario Elie.
Yeah.
And Kenny Bannister, who was with the Knicks.
Yeah, the animal.
Yeah, and those are memories I'll never forget. And we beat Manute. We beat Mario one year, then we lost to Mario the next year, and after we beat Manute, we lost to Kenny Bannister in the final 8. But those are memories. Man, I feel awful for those kids, especially those that aren't going to go on to to play professionally.
Yeah.
To have that taken away from them. I wish the NCAA would let those kids come back. If you didn't get drafted, if you don't have an offer, let them come back for a 5th year.
I think they're going
to
get a little more lenient with the policy now, at least for this year.
I don't know. We'll see. I haven't seen anything like that. But you think about the seniors like at Dayton. Now Toppin is leaving, so It doesn't really. But, the thing I love about, and I don't think the committee puts enough Cinderella teams in there. When it comes down to those last spots and they take a Power 5 team that
struggled all year,
was 500.
They've been in the tournament,
like
50 times.
Monmouth that one year where they had beaten a bunch of Power 5 teams, and I knew the little point guard Justin Robinson from Adidas Nations that I coached. I really wanted to see those teams get in there, and the Power 5s, they got enough of their guys in there. When it comes down to the bubble teams, just and the fans love it.
They do it for the ratings.
Yeah. But to me, the ratings are even higher when the low majors, the mid majors pull off upsets. That becomes even better than watching Syracuse play Duke, or a team that maybe was 7th or 8th place.
They're just thinking like, okay, we have
the people on the committee are Power 5 people.
Yeah.
So
or at least from the conference.
Yeah, that's one of the many criticisms I have of the NCAA. I think it's coming very closer to colleges forming their own deal. You see how now the NCAA is going to try to figure out how to get some players some more money.
Yeah.
With their image and likeness. I think it's I don't know how you're going to
even from a business standpoint, they're going to have to do it because players aren't going to go to college anymore. Yeah. So now they're just going to have to compete just like anything else.
Yeah. And I think that G League experiment is going to be successful because, they're going to play I think 15 or 20 games against regular G League teams, but there'll be exhibition games. And those kids will probably get clobbered because, but then they're going to do a lot of skill work, development, play against each other, scrimmage against each other.
There won't be like a real team
No, from what I heard, and I think that's smart because you throw 18-year-olds, the G League,
But they're not going to mix them? They're going to have all young kids?
Yeah, I think they might throw in a few vets. I'm not sure if they're going to do that, if they're going to keep just, 12 to 15 young guys. I haven't read through that enough. I know Sharif Abdur-Rahim and Rod Strickland, who's a friend, a great dude, really good coach. I spent a lot of time with him at Kentucky and when we were with the DR team, and was really impressed with his coaching ability. So I was sad to see him, not get a shot. I thought he should have had a shot to be a head coach.
Yeah.
He really, I would watch him in his office. He studied film and. He was dedicated to his craft, but he took a different route, and I think it's good to have him in that position, helping to mentor these young kids and figure out which ones are good enough to make this jump and make this choice. So you don't have any Corleone Youngs, guys that came out that were given bad advice.
Yep.
Even there's been so many kids that I think if they stayed, like I think if Shamgod would have stayed another year or two, he'd have been a 10 or 12-year pro. So
he's doing good work now.
Yeah, great work. I know him. I see him all the time, and I know players that he coached and that he works with in Dallas, and they love him.
I think he actually took. He kind of forced out my friend who was the player development guy.
Procopio?
Do you know Mike?
Sweet Chuck, that's my guy.
Chuck.
Sweet Chuck came to my gym through my relationship with Leo Papil and BABC from my UMass days in Vegas.
Yeah.
And I wasn't allowed in the gym, but he was there in the summer, and he worked my guys out. And I can remember Mark Dickel walking out of there going, man, that dude's a real deal. He goes, that was the best workout I ever had. But what's Mike doing now? I didn't know he left.
He's living in Chicago. Not really sure what he's up to.
Is Grover not training anymore? Because I know his gym got closed down. But
I don't know.
Hopefully they do. Mike deserves to be in the game, man. I'm shocked.
He's been hesitant to get on the podcast. It's a possibility though. He said when he was with Dallas, they didn't like him doing stuff, but
yeah,
we'll see.
I might get scolded from Indiana, but
I think you'll be fine. I have a good Sweet Chuck story from the first time he trained Chris Herron. So he goes down. Leo tells him, I got a guy down in Fall River. Go down there, train this guy. He's like, Fall River? Mike's from Revere. And Mike is Sweet Chuck, Mike Procopio. He goes down to Fall River and he sets up some like trash cans and stuff. And he's got Chris doing some work around the trash cans. And he's just like, why do you have trash cans out here? He's like, they don't move. They're not getting in my way. Like, he's like, I'm going to throw you in one of these fucking things if you don't get them out of here. And
That's
like,
Chrissy.
All right, no more trash cans.
That's Chrissy. But Mike was always never afraid to really challenge guys. That's what Grover liked about him. I think that's what Kobe liked about him.
Yeah, he had that special relationship with Kobe.
Yeah, he would really challenge Kobe, and Kobe took it. I listened to a podcast. Have you ever heard of the guy David Goggins?
Yeah, I've heard him on several pods.
Phenomenal.
Yeah, crazy.
He has the Mamba Jordan mentality. But his story is, I'm gonna send that because the guy I work with that reminds me of him is Vic Oladipo.
Okay.
So Vic's work ethic and belief and is Goggins is on a whole nother level.
I mean,
I think players can't follow him exactly to a T because they'd be hurt.
Do that.
Yeah. But his message about controlling your brain and using your brain in a positive way to make you the best that you can be and never leave anything on the table. And again, you got to be smart about it, but I was just blown away. I got a tattoo of my mother on my back, and the tattoo artist played that and goes, you got to listen to this guy. So I'm going to send that to Vic, and I'm going to send it to our president because we have speakers come in all the time in the NBA, and we've had Navy SEALs come in.
Yeah. Do you know which one he was on? Was he hosting it, or was he a guest on something?
He was a guest on with Rogan.
Yeah,
I think
I've heard
more
him
than
on Rogan.
once.
Yeah, that's where I found
one
him.
was a little shorter. One was really in
Like
depth.
3 hours.
Yeah.
I heard that.
So, I think it'd be good to, have him come in and talk to the team.
The stuff about like him running those ultra marathons with like, what did he have, a fracture in his back? And he's running ultra.
When he first started it, he was on the couch. He was 300 pounds.
Yeah.
He was drinking a milkshake, eating chips, and he saw a Navy SEAL commercial. And that's when, I don't know where it came from, but he just decided he wasn't going to let all the adversity in his life take him down. His dad was a pimp. His dad pimped.
I remember that.
He said his dad took his mother's soul. I mean, how powerful and crazy is that? That, he beat my mother down, and just took her soul away. And he said, I was fucked up. I was a fucked up kid. And I don't know where he, got that knowledge about, I'm going to train my brain to overcome all of this. I'm not going to give in to
Wasn't
anything.
he like the first black Navy SEAL?
I think
or
he
something?
was. Well, he did.
One of like 2 or 3.
He did say he was the only one in his class.
Yeah.
But he was the only one to go through it 3 times. It took him 3 times to pass it. But he did a deal where he ran 100 miles 8 weekends in a row.
Right.
And I think it took him 48 hours. So he probably ran from Friday to Sunday, had 5 days off, and then ran another 100 miles and never took a day off. So he ran Friday to Sunday. Monday, he was doing something, whether it was strength work or core work or
that's
running.
The story. I thought that was just ridiculous. He was about to run an ultra marathon, and he went into the gym. He's like, I'm going to do a light workout at the gym. I'm running tomorrow morning an ultra, which is, I don't even know if it's 100 or 50.
That might have been different, but I think this 100 deal was his own idea.
He goes into the gym and does this light workout, and then on the way out, he runs into one of his Navy SEAL buddies, and he says, I'm going to do a squat workout. Come on, let's go. And he's like, I'm not a squat workout. I'm running an ultra marathon tomorrow. And he wanted to go like max out squats. And he's like, come on, man, you're a SEAL. Let's go. So he goes and does like a full squat workout, doing like 500-600 pounds, and then he goes and runs an ultra marathon the next day.
Yeah. Well, I know there was one story where he broke all the bones in his feet.
Yeah.
And then he had gotten so exhausted, he pissed and defecated on himself.
Yeah.
And he went back to that spot after, and went back to that exact spot, and then finished the run from that spot.
That's right. That's right.
In his mind, he had to. Nothing was going to beat him. He wasn't going to let anything beat him. But that story of adversity, where, look, we all have shit in our lives, that fuck us up when we become adults, and a lot of times we give into it, and that I think led me to drink and do drugs, and I ended up figuring it out. I was lucky, but the shit he went through and how he's gotten to that level, probably why I popped my calf today, because I probably should have taken a day off, and I'm thinking about him in my mind. And
yeah, he wouldn't. He doesn't take days off.
Yeah, I went for a run today and popped the calf muscle. So, thanks, David. But he's amazing. For anybody out there listening, Google him and go watch his podcast and listen to him. He's a little over the top,
David Goggins.
Yeah, with his language, but his message is amazing, and I got so much respect for him. I know Vic's going to love it. I'm going to send it to Vic, and hopefully some of the other guys on the squad, Malcolm, Sabonis, Turner. Cool. I might send it to everybody.
Yeah, they could use a little, inspiration, entertainment, stuff like that right now.
Yeah, it's when you think you're tired, and, we got the greatest lives in the world in the NBA. And, I say this all the time. If there was no NBA, the majority of our league, I'd still be coaching or playing. If there was guys like Vic Oladipo, Kevin Durant, LeBron, if there was no NBA where there just wasn't a market, fans didn't care about it, they'd be playing the game if they were getting $200 a week.
Sure.
I can remember coaching in the ABA in Phoenix where we had no money. But I had Paul McPherson, who was in the NBA, Charlie Bell, who was in the NBA, Horacio Llamas, who was in the NBA, Jamel Thomas, who had played a couple years, was a European star, and
good.
They were basically playing, giving me everything they had, busting their asses, and weren't getting any money because the one thing they were getting was NBA scouts were coming to scout them, but they just loved to play, and it's like they had nowhere else to go.
Yep.
They didn't. The European season started. They got cut by the NBA, so they, like, all right, here's this ABA league. Let's give it a shot. Richie Fromm was on my team.
Shooter.
Gerald Honeycutt. So
Tulane.
Yeah. Guys that just would play for the love of the game, and we're all blessed, man. We're getting paid. We're all overpaid. That's why I say that. Not from a market standpoint, but when you talk about we do what
you get to do something you love and get paid a good amount for it.
Yeah. And no matter how hard we think the grind is, or the season is, and you're tired and you don't want to practice, Goggins will be in my ear the next time I feel like, hey, I'm gonna not go, be as vocal at practice today. I'm gonna not hit Sabonis as hard today, or Vic, or I'm not gonna, I'll have Goggins in the back of my mind.
I've been getting great workouts during this.
Yeah, so have I. That's why I'm in Miami. I need sweats. I need the humidity.
Yeah, same.
Yeah, and I was up in New York with my mom, and the weather was awful. And once she died, I couldn't be in that house anymore. And, so Miami for me is, I go do a 10-minute stretch, and I'm drenched.
Yep.
When I work out in L.A. with the breeze, it takes me 45 minutes to really get a deep, and you don't even get the sweat that you get here. And I'm all about the sweat. I love it.
And I hate running in the cold.
It takes forever.
Lungs.
Yeah, and
I hate it.
Yeah. I won't do it.
I just got a new bike in the mail today.
Did you?
Yeah.
Nice.
I've been in the market for a good bike because I've been riding the same bike for like 7 years, and I racked up a ton of miles on it. So
yeah,
I treated myself to a nice bike.
Good for you.
Let's go back to a little bit of the MJ stuff. A couple of the other things I heard is the tongue out, playing with his tongue out, came from his dad. His dad, I guess, like, rebuilt their home when they were kids. And, like, they were, sleeping with tarps over the home and rain coming in the house. And his dad was, like, building they redid the home.
Uh-huh.
And while he would bang nails and shit, he'd stick his tongue out while he was building the home. So he started imitating him. And I had never heard that until...
Because I used to stick my tongue out. I don't know if you can see it, but...
Yeah.
I bit my tongue in half.
Because you used to... But that was before mine, probably.
I was probably 9 years old. We were playing tackle football, but anything I did, my tongue was always out. Like when I went to the basket, or... So I, remember we were at the goal line, and I jumped over the goal line, tongue out, and two of my boys hit me, and bam... And my tongue was literally hanging out of, off my mouth, and they had to I had to have like 8 stitches, and couldn't talk for 2 weeks. But yeah, I think it's just a habit. Some people do it.
That's funny.
Yeah,
the tongue is like the most resilient part of your body. Like nerves, they regenerate faster than anywhere else. So that's good.
Tongue's underrated in life. So are the thumbs.
It's a good
Gotta
point.
have thumbs.
It's a good point. You can't talk without the tongue.
Yeah. Speaking of, let me tell you this story. This is a funny story.
Feel free.
Coaching in the Philippines in 2001, I had left the ABA. My team didn't have any money. I took Honeycutt and Fromm with me. I got a really, good job offer down there with Talk and Text. Really good owner. Love the Philippines. 20,000 people at every game.
Yeah, they're basketball crazy.
Fanatics.
I had no idea it was that big there. I went over there once.
But I get down there, and it's a third world country. There's the majority of the country is impoverished, and so they were on their phones, but no one was talking on their phones. Everybody was texting, and I'm so like, what are you guys doing?
Yeah.
And they're like, we're texting, and the name of my team was Talk and Text.
Yeah.
Because my owner, Manny Pangilinan, owned the smart phone company. He was the biggest, phone, landline and cell phone company owner in the entire Philippines. There were 70-some million people there. So it was like a penny a text. But, it was whatever. Back then, cell phones just came out, and they were more expensive. And I would call my friends back up. I'm like, you're not gonna, and I got good at it, but that was back when the
T9. It's called T9.
T9?
You have to hit the button several times
Yeah,
to get the letter.
So to get C, I had to go ABC.
I could do it without looking.
Yeah.
I was like this.
So could a lot of the Filipinos that were there, and I told my friends, and they're like, man, that's good. I go, I'm telling you, this is you can have 6 conversations with people at once. And sure enough, it came to America, I don't know how many years later, but it started in the Philippines. True story.
They got that kid coming over this year, huh? 7'2" guy?
Yeah. I actually know of him through a buddy I met through Nick Nurse, one of Nick Nurse's high school teammates. Frank Molak is training him.
Okay.
I think they either played at Northern Iowa together or in high school together, maybe Northern Iowa. But he was calling me and talking to me about it, and I just read he decided to be one of those guys in the G League experiment. So I've never seen him play, but they say he's really skilled, and hopefully. Look, I got better by getting my ass kicked when I was 12 and 13, playing against 16 and 17-year-olds.
Yep.
And I
Same
think
here.
you talk to any player, that's how you get good. And so that's what these kids are doing. They're going to go get their ass kicked 15 times in the G League. I think they're going to play some international teams of grown men. They're going to get their ass kicked there. But I think that's going to help them. And, I just did a Zoom clinic for the under-16 German national team. David Gale is the head coach of the team, and he was one of our video and player development coaches in Toronto. Really good young coach. So, talking to all those guys about player development, and, one of the things I told them, it's hard to develop, but you are never going to reach your potential until you develop some killer in you. You got to have that dog mindset, whatever you want to call it, that, look, we're not friends. We can be friends off the court, but I'm trying to, I'm not going to do anything dirty, but I'm going to be physical, and, the Mamba mentality, the Jordan mentality. All the great ones have it in the NBA, and there's a lot of not talented players that had it. You can't say not talented, but not to the level of a Jordan or a
Not
Barkley.
top tier.
Udonis Haslem had it. No one thought Udonis Haslem would ever play in the NBA.
Yep.
I'm not even sure he got drafted out of Florida.
We take a guy like my friend Rajah Bell.
Yeah,
Like if
same
he didn't
deal.
have that chip on his shoulder, he's not an NBA player.
Yeah, he had dog in him.
Yep.
And you got to have dog, and it's hard to develop, but I adopted a kid. I worked at the Benetton camp when I was a coach at UNLV.
You told that story last time.
Yeah, so Isaac. Oh, did I? Okay.
Yeah.
Where my boy came up, and I said, "Tell him what you used to do to me."
And his dad was from Roxbury, right?
Yeah, dad is a cop in Roxbury. Yeah, I think his dad is still a cop. Linwood Jenkins.
Yep.
Shout out to Linwood if you're
Okay.
out there. But they used to kick my ass, and it made me tougher. And I never made the NBA, but I had a pretty good college career and had a chance to play in the NBA. I got cut, but I never would have been that far if I didn't play against the older guys. And I always kind of had that edge playing because it was ingrained in me, that I take my ball and cry and go home or deal with it, And I love the game so much, I took it, and it made me better, made me tougher.
Speaking of Roxbury.
The Berry.
My boy Elton Tyler just had his second daughter this week.
Awesome.
You remember Elton?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So she's hope she's doing well. She had to have a little surgery. So
all right, we'll say a
she's
prayer
good.
for her.
Yep.
Randall Jackson. Remember that name?
Of course, another Roxbury guy.
He broke my heart. I thought I had him at UNLV.
Yeah, I thought you did too.
Yeah.
He loved it out there.
Yeah.
He still goes back and forth.
Oh, does he?
Vegas and Boston.
Yeah.
Works for JetBlue.
Yeah, his mom, great lady. Fun. One of the fun things about recruiting, you develop relationships. Even Elton Brand, to this day, we always talk about his mom, Daisy, because Daisy was very religious. My mom was very spiritual, religious, and I knew I had no shot at Elton once Duke got involved, but I was talking to him early on, and we developed a rapport. And he and my mom and his mom, actually had a couple conversations. And to this day, when I see Elton, that's the first thing we talk about is our moms.
That's
so
cool.
Hopefully Daisy's doing good. I haven't followed up. I haven't talked to Elton in a while.
He's doing pretty well. From
Doing
what
great.
I hear.
Doing great. Sharp kid, man, and a good person. Really, really good person. So I'm happy for him. Yeah.
So this person's name has come into my head a couple times throughout the podcast, and we talk about having a chip on your shoulder, and we talked about the MJ doc and Isaiah Thomas from the Pistons. Isaiah Thomas.
Yeah.
So you can't be a 6 foot, nothing guy and not have a chip on your shoulder and be one of the top 5 guys in the league, one of the greats. I mean, I just think he gets a bad rap.
I agree. If you've ever met him, he's another one that, my experience with him, he always treated me like an equal, and always had a smile. We had good conversations. We had mutual friends, so I don't know what went on during that, but, I think Michael came out and gave him real love when he said he's the second best point guard.
Which we're going to get to in a second because I have some questions about that.
Yeah.
I heard a recruiting story about Isaiah because I heard him on a podcast recently.
About his brother?
His brother was involved, yep. He grew up on the west side of Chicago, no electricity. The recruiters couldn't come there at night. They had to come during the day, which I'm sure they were there during the day anyway because they didn't want to be there at night.
Yeah.
And he said, a couple big schools came with a bag of money.
Yeah.
And his brother and him were like, yeah, let's take the money. And his mother was not that type of woman. And she said, we're not taking the money.
Yeah.
Get out with that,
Yeah. I've heard that story. And I've heard Isaiah talk about his mom and what a great lady she was.
Yeah, and she needed another strong, a male figure.
Yeah.
Bobby Knight comes in. So Bobby Knight, Quinn Buckner, and Wayne Embry come to his house. I used to go to Wayne Embry's basketball camp as a kid.
Great guy.
I mean, I
worked
met him
in Toronto.
times,
worked in Toronto with him.
Yeah.
One of the salt of the earth human beings. Awesome dude.
He seems like a great guy.
Yeah.
And he has a great reputation.
Yes.
And his mom was so enamored with him that she's like, that's where you're going. Because of Wayne. Was he even on the staff with Knight? I don't even know.
I don't know either. But I could see that because I would want my son to be with Wayne Embry.
Yeah.
And QB is a close friend of mine. He's our TV guy.
True.
Quinn Buckner.
Yeah.
I meant to text him because he's been getting some love in these Last Dance episodes. You see him hanging out, and he and I used to hang out back in the day.
I saw him back there.
Great dude. QB.
With the security guys and stuff.
Yeah. QB's a good dude. Was an unbelievable player. Yeah. Multi-sport all-star and and Butch Carter and I used to be close. We've fallen out of touch, but he tells stories. Knight was a tough guy, but Isaiah's brother, who ran the neighborhood in Chicago.
His older brother.
Yeah, and I forget his name. Might have been Lord or something.
Larry, maybe? Because I know Larry Jordan, but I think his brother might have been Larry.
He had a nickname, though, because he was
with the
running
Vice
shit
Lords.
in the streets. Yeah, he was the head of the Vice Lords, and he could go in the locker room. Butch said that during the game he'd be running up and down behind press row as the game's going on, cheering Isaiah, and nobody messed with him. Yeah. So I love that story.
That's good.
Yeah, he had his brother's back. He always had Isaiah's back.
So where do you put Isaiah? You saw ESPN put out the list yesterday.
Yeah.
What's your top 5 list of NBA players? I mean, it's hard for us to say. We didn't see everybody play.
And it's just so many different eras. I just don't think it's even worth talking about. You have, look at Wilt, look at Bill Russell. Jerry West was left off lists. I just think there's so many great.
He's like in 15. 14.
Oh, was he? I thought he didn't even make the top 15. Elgin Baylor, guys we've never seen. Yeah. I just think it's, when you look at it from a total perspective, MJ's the best to me.
Yeah.
And then after that, I don't think it matters. They're all great. Yeah. I don't think you can put them in any order per se. There's some guys you can take out of that equation. But when you talk about West, Baylor, Russell, Chamberlain, Bird, Magic, Durant, LeBron, Steph, Now I think Kawhi is in there because, he's, to me, he's the
like
best two-way
23rd.
player in the NBA, right now.
Yeah.
Better than LeBron. He's a better defensive player than LeBron. LeBron will probably be pissed I said that, but...
I mean, right now, I think anyone would agree with that. He is right now the best two-way player in the league.
I just, from a basketball standpoint, and they got to rest a little bit, but I thought the biggest flaws in Kobe and LeBron's game was their weak side defense. I think they just kind of did their own thing, and I can remember seeing both of them screw up a rotation and blame one of their teammates, and so I think, they were they're both great on-ball defenders, but, Kawhi is in there. But I think you have those guys that you talk about, and then there's some guys that can't be in that conversation. Like a Clyde Drexler, as great as he was, I don't think he belongs in that conversation. But KD does, Kawhi does, LeBron does. They're all right up there. And then the whole thing about championships, too. I mean, Jordan had Pippen and he had Rodman, but then he had a bunch of role players.
He wasn't stacked. His teams were not stacked.
I think championships are a little bit overrated, when you look at...
It depends how you win them. If you're the guy, then that's important. But if you're one of 3 Hall of Famers on your team, it's a little different.
Yeah.
Or the second best player on your team and you're winning titles, it's different than being the best.
Yeah. The other big thing in the NBA now with all this analytics, everybody acts like the game's faster now. But the Celtics, the Lakers, the Sixers,
over 100 shots
they
a
were
game.
playing out of the net. The ball was going through the net. They had D'Antoni's 7 seconds. They were getting it out, firing it up, and trying to score. And if they didn't, then they'd go to a matchup or an ISO or they'd run a set. But those teams were playing, it's taking it to a new level now. But Bill Laimbeer was a three-point shooter.
Mm-hmm.
There were
money.
And the fact that he could do it, I think it was on the coaches that held these players back then and didn't let them shoot threes. Because in my opinion, and we went through this with Amir Johnson, Nick Nurse and I, and Coach Casey, Dwayne Casey, decided Amir is a good free throw shooter. He's a good mid-range shooter. Why can't he be a good three-point shooter?
Yeah.
He's never going to be contested.
Yeah.
And bigs don't get closed out to. Guys, they get free, wide-open shots. And if you can make a free throw and you're an NBA player, talented enough to be in the NBA, you can make a three. Yeah. And Case gave him the freedom to shoot. I mean, he shot 40% one year. Yeah. Not in high volume, but he made some game winners. Yeah. And I think back then, if you would have let any of those guys, like James Buddha Edwards had a phenomenal mid-range. I think he could have shot threes. Yeah. I experimented with it years ago with Valanciunas in the summer, and he ended up, shooting the shit out of it in the summer.
There's no reason these guys, if they had practiced, that they couldn't have been three-point
shooters.
But
to me, it's like all this stuff is new and we created this. No, this has been – there were guys that were shooting – centers that were shooting threes. There were teams that were playing faster than we're playing now. Mm-hmm. There's just more of it now than there was then. Yeah. But to me, I kind of laugh at that. And when they, say that, the game is so much faster now and, they're –
It's just different. It's not faster. It's just different.
There's obviously there's more guys doing it. There's more teams playing fast now. But
I think things like coming down on a 3-on-1 and getting a three-pointer stuff like that. Because 3-on-1s, you didn't settle for a three.
Yeah,
you weren't allowed to.
Jordan would have.
If you're Mike, you do what you want.
Well, I had a really, really good player in the CBA, Anthony Goldwire, up and down in the NBA, and had played I think 7 years. And that was his shot. And looking back, he would pull him. And I can remember saying, man, we got to get better than that. And he's like, Coach, I can make that. And, I gave him a lot of freedom. And I said, all right. But the one thing I've learned, if you tell that player, look, if you're wide open, all right, and you're feeling it. Now, time and score is a different thing. Obviously, if we're up 5 with a minute to go, you're not shooting that shot. But in the flow of the game, you're feeling it. If you tell a kid, if you're open, shoot it. And it doesn't matter if you make or miss it, they're going to become a better shooter because they're not thinking about missing.
I know I would.
And I think that has evolved in our game, giving these guys the confidence to shoot it.
I know Steve Kerr was saying, why don't they were asking him, why don't teams trap more in the backcourt or play full court and press and things like that? And he was saying the reason is because they're afraid of giving up a three instead of a layup now. Because back in the day, you would give up a layup, but now you'd have to give up a three if you trap and they beat the trap and then they're wide open for a three.
Yeah, I think the other thing, too, you can't do it in an 82-game season.
Yeah,
I think every team at any level should have a 1-2-1-1 full court trap in their package. Yeah. Should have a zone in their package because it's advantageous, and most teams in the NBA never see it. So if you don't have that in your package and you're down 8 with 2.5 minutes to go, unless you score every time, get a couple steals, they miss every time, the game's over. You've conceded the game. Yeah. So, that's why I think Nick Nurse was brilliant when he threw a box and one that they never even practiced on Steph Curry, and we're down 20 and forced Andre Iguodala to hit a three to beat him, which is the guy you want to shooting, and yeah. So I just said that on a coaching clinic that I had. I think all teams should have it. It doesn't take much to put it in. Mm-hmm. Teams don't know how to attack it. They panic. NBA teams panic. And I've been on, teams where we've lost games where, we were up big, but we hadn't seen that all year, and they throw it on us, and players aren't used to it. They make mistakes. They turn it over. Next thing you know, the momentum changes.
Because you would think, NBA guys, that's easy for them, but they don't see it. They haven't seen it
and you don't practice against it. Right. So you don't have the proper spacing all the time, and, guys panic a little bit, like, oh, shit, what are they doing? And, yeah, so for any coaches out there listening, that's my 2 cents.
Yeah. What about the book?
Close to doing a book. I'm trying to get a very famous female writer who I developed a mini relationship with during the playoffs. I'm not going to say her name.
Okay. I do have one of her books on my table in front of him.
But I've always respected her because she's in a man's world, and she's really good at what she does, and I think last year, pre-game, I had gone up to her and just introduced myself. I didn't know who she was. She goes, I know who you are, Billy. And we just sat and BS'd and sweetheart, and I just, somehow we just got to telling stories, and I was telling the stories, and she's like, man, these are unbelievable stories. You should write a book. And I'm like, do you want to write it for me? I said, I don't want to write it where my mom and dad are alive because I think it would hurt, we've all had issues with our moms and dads, and even though we love them to death, but I didn't want them to have to read about, because some of the stories aren't flattering, and I'm if I do it, I'm going to speak from the heart. I always have, and it would be, I would do it as much to help people that, suffer with addiction and alcoholism. And, that's why I always tell my story, and people, it will come up to me, random strangers, and say, hey, can I talk to you? You're Coach Bayno. Yeah, what's up? I think I'm an alcoholic. Well, tell me about it. And then, I've had NBA coaches, NBA players. I've had just regular citizens. So that's the real, motive behind the book. But there's also just some great stories. Some people may frown on them, but it's my story. And, yeah, I made a lot of mistakes. But, I still have always lived my life trying to help people. I just think, I don't know where I got it from. Probably my mom. Some from my dad. I think they were both teachers. And my dad was a coach, and I just think you can't put enough love out in the world, and you can't do enough to help people that don't have what you have. And the disparity of wealth, and the institutional racism that I saw growing up by being in the inner city, and being adopted by my African American brothers and sisters and families that took me in and treated me like one of their own, and yet I saw the obstacles that they had to live with and grow up with, and to this day you still seeing black kids, unarmed, being shot down. And
that was terrible. I mean, the big one going on with Aubrey.
Imagine if black officers shot your son, how would you think?
I've posed this so many times, like I've done the things that these kids, and most of them are kids, have done, and they say, they shouldn't have been in the convenience store stealing a pack of gum or whatever he did, or he shouldn't have been trespassing. Yeah. Give me a fucking break. I would have been shot 100
Well, they
times.
just had a guy on, I think you can Google it. He took a TV and put it on his shoulder and took his shirt off and ran like 2 miles through multiple neighborhoods. White guy. Nobody said a word. Yeah, 2.2 miles. Nobody stopped him. They watched him.
It was 2.23 for the date that it happened.
People were waving at him. Again, it's another thing I wish we could do more to address in our country, and it just goes back to the injustices. We got to change it, you know.
We were lucky to have that white privilege.
Yeah, 100%.
And still do.
I saw it all the time. I think I said it in the last podcast. I'd be walking with my boys. They'd all get stopped, and I would walk right through, you know. I remember being in the first class plane line, and a lady came up to my buddy. You know, sir, this is the first class line.
Right.
I know.
Right.
No, sir, this is first class. And he's like, you didn't tell him it's first class. And, you know, it was just the obvious profiling, you know. And it happened in arenas. We'd be walking through arenas, and we all had backstage passes, but a lot of them were tucked in our shirts. And I walk right through. I turn around. Where's my boys? They're all being detained, you know, having to show their passes. You know, one guy, I don't know, may have given his pass away, so they wouldn't let him in.
Even one of the other things, it's not, it's racial profiling in a different way, but it just shows the divide in the country, is when I will go places and I'll be, say I'm with a group of black friends. When I'm getting through the entrance, they put up the gate or the rope or whatever, because they think you're not together. So I'll be the last one or the first one, and they'll cut it off, and I'll say, no, they're with me, or they'll say he's with me. It happens all the time. And it's just like, why can't we be together? Why is that so hard to accept?
Yeah, and it's been with us from the beginning of time, you know. Kind of hit me, like I said earlier, I was watching Gangs in New York. And so this shit's been going on since the beginning of time, you know. Who has the power? Who has the money? We're all tribal, you know. We all take care of our own, and there's nothing wrong with that, but you know, the hate and the discrimination because you don't look alike, you don't look the same. You know, it's sad. It's sad. Hopefully we can. Got to keep fighting. You know, you got to keep trying. Jay-Z said an amazing thing on the show Letterman did on Netflix.
Yeah,
I forget
saw
what
that.
he called it. Great name to it. Allow me to introduce.
Yes.
You know, he said during the Obama administration, he said he was happy Trump got elected, because after Obama, we were kind of lulled into thinking that there weren't, you know, these racists out there and these, you know, Orion and Aryan Nation and you know, it was calmed down and these hate groups. And he said now, not only do we know that it's still alive and well based on Charlottesville and all these other protests, but we know who they are. We have their pictures. We have their faces. And so, you know, hopefully, you know, it leads to something positive, but it's just, it's disheartening. It really is, to see the divide, both politically, racially.
I heard something similar to that recently, and it definitely made a lot of sense. It said, not every Trump supporter is a racist, but every racist is a Trump supporter.
Yeah, that makes sense.
You know?
That makes sense. Yeah, because my friends are not racist.
Right.
You know, my buddy who I'm hoping, you know, we get back together. He's not a racist at all.
Yeah, my friends aren't.
It's economics. It's money. You know, they save money on taxes. You know, when the Republicans are in there.
And I also think Trump, above anything, is an elitist, above being a racist.
Well, he proves it every day. I mean, he's a bully. You know, he can't take any criticism. You know, he has no emotional intelligence. And I honestly think he ran as a goof. I think he wanted to improve his brand, and then all of a sudden he realized, you know what? There's a certain segment of this country that if I appeal to their likes, I'm going to get elected.
Yeah.
And I think he, you know, that's why he even said it, you know, if I ever ran for president, I'd run as a Republican. He said that, you know, 10, 15 years ago.
Last topic on this, since we're on politics. What do you think about Mark Cuban running for
I'd
president?
love Mark Cuban as our president.
That's good to hear, because
And he's
a
a Republican.
Yeah, I think he said he would run as like independent.
But I think he, you know, he's a billionaire. He leans probably more right than left.
Fiscally conservative, but I think socially.
Yeah, 100%. Another great guy with a big heart that cares about people.
Yeah, he seems to.
Yeah, I would vote for him in a heartbeat. I hope he does run.
I think he really wants to. I think his family is holding him back.
I mean, he's already won an NBA championship.
Yeah.
You know, why not go try to become president and make a difference?
Well, I don't know who would want to be president, but
Yeah, it's, well, you know, the problem is you get, even if you have good intentions, I think the whole system is just set up with the lobbying and the interests that you're going to get sucked into having to make some decisions that you don't want to make. But you're going to be probably, if you want to be president and get the votes, you know, you got to do certain things that you probably don't want to do.
and he'd have to take a pay cut.
Yeah, well, he could still own the team, just he wouldn't be, you know.
Involved in the day-to-day.
But no, I'd vote for him in a heartbeat. In a heartbeat. I tell my Republican friends, look, give me anybody but Trump.
Sure.
You know, I'm not anti-Republican. I'm not anti your beliefs. I'm just anti this guy is running our country, and I don't think he's a good human being, and I think that matters.
Period. I think it's safe to say after 2 podcasts, you do have plenty of information for both. And I think we've
Not even. This isn't even the tip.
scratched the surface because we've had some good conversations off air, and I pride myself on having some good stories, but you definitely take the cake, my friend.
And there's plenty more to come, so we'll see. We'll see if we get it off the ground. I think we will. If, you know, the person I talked about decides she doesn't want to do it, I've got 10 high-profile writers that want to do it. They'll probably be mad at me that I'm offering it to her first. And, you know, I always say I'd like to believe, and I think it's true, that really I've hurt myself more than I've ever hurt anyone by my actions. And I'm not perfect, and I made a lot of mistakes, and I have a ton of issues, but you know, I've had enough good people in my life that made me look in the mirror and say, you know what, you need to change. You know, or you're going to be dead. But the stories along the way, you know, it's my journey. I wouldn't take any of it back. I really wouldn't. Even though maybe if I did, if I could change some things, I'd have been an NBA head coach or an NBA player. I still, it's who I am. It was my journey, and I own it, and I own my mistakes. But hopefully it's a little motivation for some people out there that have the same struggles that, you know, will say, damn, you know, that sounds like me. Maybe I need to, you know, change the way I'm living a little bit. The hardest part is, and I'm going to give all my friends the editorial ability to take their names out. Like, here's a story. You want your name in it, or you want to be known as a friend?
Fair enough.
I'll even do that because there's a couple really funny stories with Charles and Michael, but maybe they don't want their mentioned, so I won't. Yeah. I'll just, you know.
It's just the best basketball player in the world.
No, I won't say. I'll just say a famous NBA player. Then they can't. There's, you know. But there are some funny stories with Charles. He's such a good dude, man. I miss him. We've fallen out of touch. You know, obviously, you know, me being in the NBA on the East Coast, him living in Phoenix. We see each other periodically, but he was so much fun to hang out with, and such a good dude.
Mike calls you Billy Boy. What's Chuck call you?
Bayno. Yeah. You know, they both love to mess with people, but they love it even more when you mess back. So I was always this cocky, arrogant, you know, little punk white kid that, you know, thought I was the shit, and I was the head coach at UNLV, and it was just my nature. So I would fuck with Charles, and I'd fuck with Mike, you know, and I remember having a dinner with Tiger Woods when he was really young, and it was Charles. My dad actually came. Tiger was there. My dad played professional baseball baseball in Germany when they were both in the military. They played military baseball together. Earl Woods caught for my dad. My dad was a pitcher. Crazy. And he even showed me an article, and I brought it up to Tiger. I said, just talk to your dad, maybe see if he remembers, because they only played together in a few All-Star games, but. So Charles at the table. I had some other friends. Michael wasn't there. Forget there was one other NBA player that we were tight with, and both ball busters. And Tiger was such a nice, quiet, conservative guy. And Charles and he were tight. And Charles would mess with him, and he would never go back at him. But it was funny because I'd always go back at Charles, and he loved that shit. We had this thing where, and my buddy who I talked about earlier that we're not.
Yeah, they had the falling out with.
He had this thing. If anytime you were telling stories and bragging about whether it was girls or whatever, one or the other of us would be like, you might have 3 or 4 people around you or more than that. We would just scream out, lie! So he'd be in the middle of his story, just be, lie! And Charles loved that. So, because Charles would be telling the story about how beautiful this girl was, I'd be like, lie! But yeah, we used to have fun. But Tiger would never go back at him. And I'll never forget a question because I was young. I was probably 33, 34. And he was just kind of getting into the Vegas scene. And he's like, Coach, I got to ask you a question if you don't mind. I said, yeah, whatever, Tiger, what's up? He goes, well, you're young. And he said, doesn't the temptation here ever get to you, and affect your job? I said, what do you think? And he goes, I'm asking you. I said, yeah, it does. I said, it does. I said, I put myself in situations that I probably shouldn't. But that was funny.
Doesn't it feel good to have some discipline, though? Seriously.
Yeah, for me, I didn't for so many years until I got talked about it. And that's why I'm so happy that the NBA is doing what they're doing with mental health. And DeMar DeRozan is like a little brother to me. I love that kid. I coached him for 2 years. There's not a better human being. Kevin Love, same way. I mean, we're really, really close. And to see those guys come out and talk about mental health, because we all have it. I have mental health issues. I've had it all my life. That's why I drank and it's why I drugged. I self-medicated. I didn't know what it was. It's so prevalent out there. And, these guys are out there talking about it. It's become a huge thing in the NBA now. We all have it's not taboo anymore. Ron Artest, deserves a ton of credit. He was the first one to really embrace it and not be afraid to publicly speak about it. Another misunderstood guy who I've known from Queensbridge. I hung out in the projects there. I've got a lot of friends from the QB projects. Yeah. And, Ron is, again, another one of the great, great guys I've ever met that cares, that gives back, that helps kids in the hood, and he's always done it. But he was portrayed, he had some mental health issues and he would snap at times. And that was the whole Malice at the Palace and the brawl. But he, at the core of who he is, he's a great, great dude, man. And he started it. And so now players aren't afraid to talk about it. They're not afraid to get help. I just spent an hour on the phone with our team psychologist.
I was going to say, do you guys have one? I know the Celtics have one.
Yeah, every team does now. But I learned, I've been through therapy probably 3 different times. And it's helped me because I always thought I partied because I just love to have fun.
Yeah.
And then I started talking about it, and it's like, damn, you were covering up pain. You were doing this and taking it to different levels to numb yourself, whether it was pressure or
to deal with trauma.
Trauma or pressure or, what have you. We all have different issues. And so I'm really, really happy to see, Adam start that initiative and those players spearhead it. And I think it's going to help so many young kids out there. I'm helping a young man now that was incarcerated for 3 years from the inner city where I grew up in, Newburgh, New York. And he's changed his life around. And he just graduated from junior college. He's about to sign a Division I scholarship.
How'd you come in contact with?
It's the hood where I learned how to play. And so I would go back and do clinics.
Oh, yeah.
And so it's actually a good question, good story. So we'd go to the park, and I had a friend that has a nonprofit there. In Newburgh, New York, is the murder capital of New York. People don't know that. Per capita, it has the highest murder rate. And all the prisons are upstate. Yeah. And so a lot of times the prisoners get released and, they can't get a job. So they go back into the hood and they have to survive. And so they go back to crime. And so, it hasn't gotten any better in Newburgh in 30 years. It's actually gotten worse than when I was there. And, when I was there, I was I was one of the guys. They called me Snowboy because I was the only white kid in the hood. And
we talked about your
yeah,
rap career
and so I was kind of untouchable. I never felt in danger. But now I won't go back there unless I call my boy and say, hey, I'm coming in, meet me on the corner. So we would do clinics outside. We did an all-day clinic with mixture of kids. A lot of good players come out of there. And then after, it's about 5:30, 6 o'clock, the camp is done, and I see this kid playing 2-on-2, and he's killing it. And he can't be more than 12 or 13 years old. So I said to my boy, who's that? And he told me his name, and he said he's the best player in the whole city, but he's caught up in the street life. And so I went over to him, and we talked, and I introduced myself, and the fact that I had NBA behind my name, he listened to me. And I said, look, I want you to come to the next camp.
And he was 12, 13?
I think he was 13 or 14. Had already been shot 2 or 3 times. Didn't play on the team because, he had issues in school. Probably wasn't going to school.
What did he go to prison for?
They won a state tournament game, and he was with, his boys.
His high school team?
Yeah, his high school team. Newburgh, New York, beat actually Justin Robinson's team, who was at Kingston. Justin was a really good player for Monmouth that I mentioned earlier, who's now playing pro. And, he was with the street dudes, and they got drunk and high or whatever, and he shot a gun in the air in a club. I don't know what it was over, to scare someone, or they were just messing around. But because he had some other issues, we fought and tried to get him a second chance. And, I sent letters to the judge, and, they just decided that, he needed to pay the price for this. So, he did 3 years, and he got out on good behavior. He got his GED. And, I pray for him every day. I just talked to him yesterday, and I'm hoping he can stay on the path.
So how old is he?
He's 24 now. He's 24. A lot like Jamal Tinsley. He's got that crafty New York City point guard game. Yeah. Couldn't shoot when he was younger, but really worked on it. Shot like 39% in junior college last year.
Where did he go, JUCO?
Clarendon College in Texas. And hopefully he's about to sign a scholarship at Maryland Eastern Shore in the MEAC.
HBC.
Yeah, be close to. He's got a girlfriend that I think he's going to marry, and her mom has kind of adopted him. But again, a kid that I don't even think his mom was in his life that much. I'm not sure, but I know his dad wasn't. And kids just need love, man, and they need a second chance. And, sometimes the street gets the best of them, and you can't take the street out of them. I'm hoping that's not the case. He and I have had long talks about that. I try to keep him from don't go back to Newburgh, so it's just there's too much shit that can happen there, and somebody's going to test your manhood, and I know you're tough, and you're going to do something. You got more to lose than any of those dudes, so don't even put yourself in that position.
Yeah, keeping him away from there is definitely...
The hood's the hood, man. It's been like that in our country. I'm helping a kid, Karan Butler and I got really, really close. He was going to come play for me at UNLV, and then the Lamar Odom stuff happened, and I told him go to UConn. It was probably not going to end well for me here, but I helped his uncle, Karan's uncle, get out of prison and get him in a JUCO. And so I always try to help kids from Racine. I've developed relationships with guys back there. And I just helped, got a kid a scholarship to my alma mater at Sacred Heart, and he just decided to transfer, so we got him at a scholarship at Louisiana Monroe. Nice. But again, another kid that just no mom, no dad, and what do you expect him to do, So he's overcome, a lot of tough obstacles in his life. Just something that I've always wanted and felt it was my duty to help young kids, because I saw it at a young age. I went home to a middle-class neighborhood, but I was in that hood every day, and I saw shit that was unfair, and it was like, damn, this is America, and the educational system, the poverty, the violence, the lack of choices, and they're good kids.
This is a good example of it. I have a friend back home that's a teacher in the high school that we went to. And he says he speaks to other teachers at the high school, and they say things like, I pay more attention to this kid because of the family he comes from than to this kid, because it's not even race, it's more socioeconomic, where with this kid, he has 2 parents that care. even though he's a fuck up or a bad student or whatever it is. But this kid is a fuck up, but he comes from nothing, and there's nobody there to like push back against the teacher, so they don't even deal with it. They don't even try. Yeah. But with the kid who has the two parents, he says, I have to answer to them. When he goes home with bad grades, they're going to call me and say, what happened, what's going on? So I have to be on point with this kid. So they get more attention. Yeah. So they get more attention at home and at school, you know, which is, you know, and that boils down to socioeconomics and race. And
I wish we had more, and Obama started it, but I wish we had more charter schools, because I remember watching a documentary in Baltimore where it was a lottery to get into the charter school, because they saw every kid that went in there, you know, 90% of them went to college, and it changed their lives.
I think Jalen Rose's charter school in Detroit is like 100%.
Yeah. And LeBron's school in Akron. You know, I just wish there were more in the inner cities, because even if they were only 200 students in there, you're changing 200 lives who are then going to go on and try to change other lives and
change their family cycle.
Yeah, and break the cycle. And you know, if I were president, I would do corporate tours. I would take CEOs, white CEOs, and I would take them through the different neighborhoods and show them how beautiful these young kids are that then grow up to be murderers because they have so few choices and because of the obstacles. And they grow up and, you know, and they're drug dealers and they're incarcerated. You know, to see, you know, put a face to it, you know, and you know, the disparity of wealth in our country is a problem, and you know, share it. And that's what I've tried to do. I've given away hundreds of thousands of dollars, and I wish I could give away more. You know, if I was ever a player and made millions, and I give guys like Jalen Rose and LeBron so much credit for doing what they're doing, and they're changing lives. They're saving lives, man. Like hundreds of lives by these charter schools.
Mark Cuban, listen up. You need somebody for your cabinet. We got
no. I'm just gonna
urban planning czar.
No, all I'm gonna do is
Bill Bayno.
Hunt votes for you, Cubes. I'm Cuban, and I have a close friend. Rest in peace, Dan Fagan. Was a big time Asian who tragically died a few years back, and Dan and I were real close, and it was just so sad. And he had a 5-year-old son at the time. Braden, who's a great kid, and I hope Braden's doing well. I don't see much of him. I didn't know Dan's family very well. I saw him at the funeral, but I'll hunt votes for Cubes, and we need somebody like him. I'd vote for him in a minute.
Bill Bayno, great human, and he also happens to be a coach for the Indiana Pacers. That's his side job.
Yeah. Yes, no, that's my main job. Let's keep it 100.
All right. Stay healthy. Hope you guys finish the season. If not, so be it.
I hope next season's not affected. I just hope we get out of this with less deaths. I don't want to see any more players, you know, parents die. You know, my mom died, and, you know, it's real. It's out there. It's spreading. I get the economics of it, but I just hope we can somehow find a way to come together and beat this thing, and you know, hopefully we can start basketball again, and everybody stays safe, and there's nothing, you know, no negative, you know, things come from it.
Ratings will be through the roof.
Oh God, yeah, but who can afford to pay ads? Other than Amazon and Google? There's only, you know, you can't. And why would Amazon pay ads? They don't need to. They're, you know, it's like they're all the takeout places and the online places, they don't need to waste money on ads. People have no choice. They have to go that way. So, you know, you think the ratings would help bring more money in, but I'm not sure there's more money out there, you know, to give.
That's a good point. I've been thinking about how they can make up a lot more money, TV money they can get to cover up for the attendance money.
But you got to have
the sponsors
willing to pay. And if I'm Amazon, I don't need to advertise.
But Amazon's one of the healthy companies.
But I'm saying even the healthy companies, what's their motivation? Exactly. Crazy times, but we'll get through it. We're America.
Yeah, it's too bad. The Celtics were going to get a ring this year, too. Thanks for coming on, Bill. All right, brother. Good old Billy boy. I'm glad he stopped by. Really tough couple of years for him. His dad died last year, His mom passed last month. I think it's time for that book. I think it's what you got to give the people what they want. I think that book would be great, especially right about now. I'm fiending for some hoops. Having all these hoop guests on. Bayno this week. Next episode, we're going to have Mike Procopio. He was a player development guy with the Mavericks. Just a hoop junkie like myself, like a lot of you guys. He's from Boston. Worked with BABC with Leo Papil. If you played or coached basketball in the Boston area growing up, you know this guy. You might know him as Sweet Chuck, but everybody knows him. So the last few days I spent editing this podcast, and Bill Bayno's been calling, saying that he noticed some courts are opening up in Miami. He wants to get out there and get some shots up. I haven't picked up a ball since the first week of March, so I am definitely ready to go. Hopefully we can get that done this week. Let's handle a little business here in the tail end. If you could please rate and review the podcast on iTunes. Right below my podcast feed, there's a segment where you can give me 5 stars. You can say something, a few words, a phrase, a statement, whatever. Thank you very much for that. And please share it on social media. Share it with your friends. And let me know who you guys want on here. If you know somebody, if you have a connect that might fit what I'm doing, and I have some interest, or they have some interest, or you have some interest, throw it out there. Maybe we can make it happen. And let's not forget the man responsible for the music you're listening to and all the music you hear now on Keepin It A Hundo. His name's Nesby Phipps. You can find him on iTunes. He's got instrumentals. He's got raps. He's got some great music. He's from New Orleans, and he was a guest on here right before we got on lockdown. So support Nesby, support Keepin It A Hundo, and stay safe.